Today, we're diving into a fascinating conversation about human behavior and choice. It's a little bit philosophical, a little bit psychological, and ultimately, a lot about understanding ourselves better.
That sounds intriguing. So what's the big picture here? What are we exploring in this conversation?
We're examining the idea of teleology, which is a philosophical approach to human action that suggests we're all driven by goals. This idea is in direct contrast to ideology, which argues that our actions are primarily determined by past experiences, like traumas or childhood events.
Wow, that's a really interesting framework. So in a nutshell, teleology says we act because we're driven by goals, while ideology says we act because of things that happened to us in the past.
Exactly. And the text we're discussing today explores these concepts through a conversation between a philosopher and a young person. Let's break it down. The philosopher argues that even seemingly impulsive actions like anger are driven by underlying goals. He uses the example of a mother who yells at her daughter, but then suddenly becomes polite when her daughter's teacher calls. The point being, the mother is using anger as a tool to get what she wants, not because she can't control her emotions.
That's a pretty shocking example, but it makes sense. It's like we're always trying to achieve some outcome. Do you think the text then argues that we always consciously decide on our goals? Or is it saying that we can be driven by unconscious desires, like the mother in that example?
That's a great question, and the text suggests that both are true, to a certain extent. We are, not always fully aware of our motivations. We can have unconscious desires and goals that influence our choices, but the important point is that we can choose our goals. We don't have to be controlled by them. We can choose to take control of our desires and act in a way that aligns with our values, not just the past.
I see. So even if we're influenced by past experiences, we still have the ability to change our behavior and make new choices?
Exactly. And this is where the idea of change comes into play. The text argues that if we accept the idea of teleology, that we are goal-oriented, we can take ownership of our lives. We can change the way we act, even if the past has influenced us in some way.
It's fascinating how this approach gives us some control. So how does the text suggest we can actually start to make these changes? Is there a specific process or a set of steps we need to follow?
The text doesn't give a specific process, but it does suggest that understanding ourselves and our goals is a crucial first step. We need to be aware of our own desires and motivations before we can change them.
So it's almost like self-reflection is the foundation of changing our behavior, even if it's a bit messy. I like that.
Exactly. The text uses the example of a friend who is reclusive. His situation, while seeming like it's determined by his past, is ultimately a choice. He chooses to stay in his room because he's seeking a certain outcome, like his parents' attention. He's acting in line with a goal, even if it's not a very healthy one.
Okay, I'm getting this. So even if we have a history of childhood trauma, we still have the power to choose what our goals are and how we want to live. We can't change the past, but we can choose our present and our future.
Absolutely. We're not machines controlled by our past. We're capable of making choices and shaping our own lives.
So in a way, this teleological approach is quite empowering. It's a way of thinking about ourselves that allows us to move forward, even if the past has been difficult.
It really is. We have this incredible potential to create the lives we want, despite our past experiences. And that's a hopeful message to hold on to, don't you think?
Definitely. We're not defined by our past. We can change and become the people we want to be. It's empowering.
I think the text is really trying to encourage us to embrace this idea of possibility and potential. We are capable of change, and it's our choice to shape our future. That's what we're all about, isn't it?
It really is. This conversation has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's a reminder that we have the ability to create our own destinies, even if we're not always aware of the tools we're using.